So the more you work on different products and the more you think about your day-to-day products, the more you can build your product sense.
Whenever you want to switch a role, the best way to switch the role is to actually do that work rather than just interviewing for it and then transitioning, because you're already into the weeds of it, and then you can
Did you have any experience where you kept doing these things and something came on your way, that maybe brought you a new connection, brought you a new role, or any experience like that?
If you can get into the art of building these long-lasting relationships, it's actually going to benefit your career. And so you have to think bigger in this case.
Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast, Everything Product. We talk about different product management concepts and latest technology insights in this channel. Before I start the podcast today, right, I want to thank each and everyone who has been trusting us and following us for all of this time. We hit our first big milestone of 10,000 subscribers last week. So thank you everyone for following us. And I'm super excited about today's podcast too. Our team has been thinking about doing Women in Product series for like quite some time now. And we have our first women product manager on our channel. So Ketaki, thank you so much for being on the channel and spending time with us.
Thank you, Funny. Glad to hear about your milestone and rooting for you all around.
Thank you so much. And for all the listeners, Ketaki is an AI product manager who is currently working in Oracle. And more than the professional work and what she has been doing, she's one of the persons who has been very active in several communities. So she's a very active member in Women in Tech. I mean, she has presented in several conferences. She's the co-organizer for Product Tank, and she has been very active on LinkedIn, and she's a very active mentor for different people as well. So super excited having her in our podcast. And we'll be talking about two different things. One is personal branding. That is something a lot of people struggle with, and a lot of people try, but they're unable to accomplish things. So she's an expert in that. So we have some questions lined up for her. And then we'll also be talking about product management. AI product space has been bubbling for the last year or so, and there are not many people in the industry who can talk about it. So we'll be talking about some of the things with that with Kit. I'll start with a simple question. What motivates you? Like, as product managers, our day is extremely busy. But what motivates you in doing all of these things beyond your professional career?
All right. So when I think about it, I'm here, and I'm working as an AI product manager at Oracle, and I've reached where I have where I'm currently in the professional world because of some people who took a chance on me, and it's because of people who were ready to give back to the community, and they were able to empower me with the right resources and choices that I could make at the right time to be where I am. And so I feel like once I've reached here, and now that I'm able to understand a little deeper about the product community, I also want to give back and ensure that people who were in the same career stage as me a few years ago, I can help them in the ways that I can. And so that involves just these little moments of fulfillment that I get by mentoring people, by presenting my work at conferences, and by also talking to people on podcasts and sharing my experiences so that someone can benefit out of it. So that's the core motivation of where it comes from. But I'm very thankful for people who have been able to showcase that and lead by action in showing that to me. So that's what I'm doing, just following their legacy.
No, that's great to hear, Ketki. And one of our personal things is that as well, because if you think about me, Sidhu, or Srinath, right, all three of us have been through the journey. We were engineers. We have transitioned through some MBA or something like that. And there's a lot of people who helped us in being here. Now, if we are product
Yeah.
leaders in the space, it helped us a lot. So great to hear that you're giving back to the community, and then you're trying to help other people join our professions as well. One more thing I wanted to ask you, right, is it's not easy. Like, how do you manage your time? Because you have 8 to 10 hours of your day doing your professional work. Then you're very active on LinkedIn. You've been writing articles on different channels and stuff. How do you define your time or manage your time in doing these things?
So in terms of time management, I feel like it is being a product manager helps a lot because you can define priorities in terms of what you want to do in your personal and professional life. And so there are days and weeks where my work takes precedence over everything else. And I'm just giving all my focus and attention to work. And maybe when I'm done working, I don't have energy to do anything else. But then there are weeks where I'm able to give a lot to the other initiatives that I'm working on. So at any point of time, my calendar is filled with the tasks that I want to do, the tasks that I want to accomplish in a week, in a month. And it might shift and get reshuffled over one week and over the next week and then over some days. But in the end, I know that by the end of this month, I want to get these things done. I want to apply for this award. I want to write this article. I want to maybe pitch my experience to a podcast. And when I have those things in my mind, it sets the theme for that week. So there might be days when I slack and don't get things done, but then by the end of that month, I'm able to achieve something. And then that's how it keeps me going. So just having those little checkpoints and having those goals on your calendar so that you have it in front of you all the time, and then you can keep yourself accountable. So that helps. And I don't try to multitask at all. I just try to focus on one thing at a time.
There are different ways you can build your personal brand, and you as a person have been doing great at multitude of channels. So I wanted to understand, what are your thoughts about personal branding, and how does someone go about doing that?
So when we talk about building a personal brand in general, first of all, there are several myths that have to be addressed around this. And the first myth is that people always talk about finding your niche, but it's not really necessary to find your niche because what I've observed while sharing my experiences is when I write about my everyday life, and maybe I'm talking about product management all the time, but there are days when I just talk about my childhood and how it has shaped me to be the person that I am. And so people resonate a lot with those kind of topics. So you have to mix and match diverse aspects of your life because our careers today, they are multidimensional. They don't focus on just our job. They are not completely targeted towards one aspect. So the more you talk about your everyday life, the more you normalize these conversations, the more people resonate with it. So that's the first thing. You have to diversify your content. You don't have to always find your niche or stress about it. And the second thing is you identify your personality. So as a person, I derive a lot of joy by talking to people, by sharing my experiences on podcasts and also writing. So I do all of those things. But for some people, they might not be willing to talk to others. They might not be willing to do a lot of speaking engagements and they might prefer writing. So you can just do that. So once you figure out what kind of channels suit your personality, maybe you want to write more, maybe you just want to participate in hackathons and share about that, or maybe you just want to be on as many podcasts as you can and share your experience through conversations. So you have to find those channels, and then once you have narrowed down the channels that you can apply to, that you share your content on, then you start crafting a strategy on this is my cadence. I'm going to write once a week, I'm going to write once a month, and I'm going to post these things and I'm going to talk about these things. So then it becomes very easier. It becomes easier for you to handle everything, and it does not feel like a burden. And that's the thing that I'm going for, where there are several months where I don't post anything on LinkedIn because I just don't feel like it. But I don't take it as a burden and I share things when I can, and people appreciate that. So it's just about finding the right channel that is suited to your personality, finding the topics that you can talk about, and then doing it at your own pace without taking the pressure of posting every day and posting every month and all those rules that you might apply to yourself.
Actually, I kind of resonate with that. Like when I was, even when I started posting on LinkedIn, I think that's the first advice which I got was, pick a niche, find your niche, stick to your niche, and all. But that's not true for all the at least all the platforms, right? So LinkedIn, I think people resonate more to personal stories, pictures, rather than just product management. And if you just keep posting product management, it will become stale soon, and people, I think that you have to make it more engaging for people. But that's completely different when you write a newsletter, right? Where for my newsletter you just focus on product management. If I talk anything else, there's not much engagement. So if I talk about even my 1 year anniversary, there's like people don't care about it.
Yeah, I've seen these posts on LinkedIn where it has just become so saturated and people now write about they watched this series and these are 5 product management lessons that they learned from those series. And I just get agitated looking at that content because there are some things that are just meant for entertainment. You cannot fit product management into everything that you do. And so it's just about copying each other's trends and just doing everything under that umbrella, which is completely saturated this content market on LinkedIn, which I feel very sad about because people have stopped sharing their unique experiences and they focus on what is trending and they just try to write in a similar template. So you have to stop and rethink about those things.
So maybe a follow-up question, quick follow-up question to that, right? Like I'm assuming like when you're building a community and also doing all of these posts and all of that stuff, it's you doing, and you also do like one-on-one sessions or mentorship with people, and how does that happen normally for you?
So the way that this works is in 2021, I heard this in pandemic where I was not feeling a sense of fulfillment and then I was looking for something beyond my job to help me feel meaningful and to just add a sense of fulfillment to what I was doing. So during that time, I started having Google form on LinkedIn and just asking people to fill that Google form if they were interested to get one-to-one mentoring sessions with me. But then over the last year or so, I've seen a lot of mentoring platforms rising. Like there is Topmate and there is Kriya and there are all these platforms where you can be a mentor and people can then either you monetize that or you offer your sessions for free and then people can, based on their needs, they can sign up for that and they can get these mentoring sessions. So with some people, it's just about one-time mentoring sessions. With some people, they might want a series of mentoring sessions. Maybe they're trying to crack an interview and they need constant advice. And with other people, they just have one career decision that they need advice about. So that's how I've tried to become a mentor on all of these platforms.
And
And whenever it's possible, I do it.
so do you have like, if anybody who wants to, at least people who are listening, right, if they want to become a mentor, do you have a recommendation on which platform to use, or your personal preference?
I have seen a lot of platforms, but my personal preference would be, and this is not sponsored by the way, but my personal preference would be TopMate because it gives you the analytics very effectively. Once you're mentoring people, you also get to know how much that person has enjoyed. They give you testimonials, and then you can also look at how many people are focusing on which mentoring session of yours, and then you can have a tailor-made plan for what you can offer to the community. And all my mentoring sessions are free because I this is just something that I'm doing to give back to the community.
And for all the listeners who have been listening, right, go to Topmate, search for Ketaki Vaidya and block her calendar. No, that's awesome, Ketki. I have
Hmm.
one thing that I resonated a lot as well, right?
Hmm.
Storytelling. So as product managers,
Hmm.
we need to tell a story so that we can clearly communicate what we are envisioning. And one of you mentioned the same, right? We are a diverse, we as even though we are one person, we have a diverse portfolio. We
True.
grew as we continue to learn from different aspects of life. Can you talk a little bit more about how you incorporate that, both in your professional career and probably in the other activities that you do as well?
Yeah, so I would say storytelling is definitely very important for a product manager, and also because you have to influence everyone around you without authority, and you have to do it in a way that resonates with them, and they can also understand what is important for the product. So the way to build storytelling would be just being a good observer. And that comes with just looking at maybe you're watching a TED talk, or maybe you are watching your colleague give a presentation. So there are nuances of how people present and what is good about the way in which they present that you can focus on. And then you start making, maybe have a journal, or you can note it down somewhere online. But you start noting down the things that you like. So maybe someone in their introduction says a beautiful sentence that resonates with everyone. I usually try to note these things down. I don't use that exactly, but it helps me to understand this is something that moves people, or this is something that helps in gripping the audience's attention. So you start with things like that. You observe everyone around you, and it's just like product sense. Once you start approaching everything with that lens, things become more evident. So that would be the first thing. And the second thing is, once you start speaking, if your presentations are recorded, if your podcasts are recorded, do the dreadful thing of watching yourself speak. And that will give you a lot of feedback about how you can improve. So, for instance, when I watched my conference presentations, I noticed that just is a word that I say a lot. And then once I still say that a lot, and you can go back to this conference, you can go back to this recording and see for yourself. But that is something that I always keep in my mind, in order to ensure that I'm not using a lot of fillers. I'm not using the same word over and over again, because it is taking away the essence of what I'm trying to convey to the audience. So just those two things, I would say, would make you a very good storyteller.
We have watched our podcast enough that we know each of our commonly used words, and we make sure we remind the others like when they're repeating.
You won't see
Everyone has
those,
something or the other.
but you won't see
You
that
will
in
edit
the
it
in our
out.
actual video, Ketki, because AI has been so advanced that we remove all the fillers when we post our videos and stuff.
That is good, but this is where you are getting the chance to edit it. What about the places where you're speaking live? You
That's
can't do
true.
anything about it. And that's why you have to constantly think and try to improve on these little things that no one will tell you, but you would observe when you watch your recording.
Even like when you're talking about, right, like the content you write and all, right, I feel that like as you write more content on specific topics, you have a more deeper understanding of it, and that an extension to that is people reach out to you with questions on that content and you again reclarify that. So the more you do this exercise, the better you have the understanding of like whatever topic you're writing about. So that even makes you better at that, right?
Absolutely. And a very easy way to do that is, in our professional world, we are always trying to upskill, we're always trying to learn something or the other. Once you start sharing those perspectives on LinkedIn, or maybe you write an article about it, it's very easy to reflect on what you've learned. That way, you're better able to retain it, but at the same time, you keep discussing it with other people. They reach out to you with queries, and then it makes you a much better thought leader. Thought leader is a strong word, but it makes you a much better student in that particular aspect or topic.
From the time I was a kid, I've always heard these things
Mm-hmm.
that, hey, if you have some thoughts in mind, write it down. When you write it down, you'll be able to like clearly tell the thought process. This goes back to the Amazon principles and everything as well, right? We do on a daily
Mm-hmm.
basis, like 1 pager, 6 pagers, etc., etc. But the new thing that I've always been hearing, even in the product con recently that I've been in, one
Mm-hmm.
of the speakers, I think Amit or someone, they have been mentioning that, hey, record yourself and then talk to your watch it over. And we continually do that too, because we post our podcast, right? We see ourselves and we'll be like, dude, what the hell did I tell at that time? But it actually teaches a lot about yourself.
It
It
does.
teaches a lot about how you can improve and how you can convey what you want to tell to the other people and stuff. I want to ask about one
Yeah.
last thing on that, right? Networking,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a saying in the world, right? You are who you know, or you will be who you know in the next few years or few decades and stuff. So how do you go
Mm-hmm.
about doing networking, growing your network? It could be social channels like LinkedIn, or in your personal profile and stuff.
Yeah, so I think once networking is a skill that I don't think our schools prepared us a lot for, but then it makes or breaks what you do in your personal and professional life, especially in today's era where people can network so well with each other and they can build a sustaining relationship. So the way that I see networking is, there are you it differs based on the purpose of your networking. So you might have a short-term goal with one of the people that you meet on LinkedIn, and you might want, maybe say you want to get your resume reviewed by that person. So this is a short-term goal. You're trying to network with that person, They're going to review your resume once, and then that's it. You're not going to go beyond that purpose. And the second kind of relationship that you might build would be very long lasting, where maybe you're trying to get someone to be your mentor, or maybe you're just following someone for the content that they're posting, and you always want to stay connected because you want to follow their journey and keep learning from their journey. So first of all, you have to be very clear about the purpose of reaching out to someone. And the more honest you are about this, the more people will respect it. And no one owes you anything when it comes to networking. So let's say I am sending a personalized invite to someone. It is completely reasonable for them to not accept it. And it's completely reasonable for them to tell me that, hey, I don't have time to review resumes right now, and I will not be accepting this request. So that's not to be taken personally. So when you're reaching out to people, especially when you're beginning your networking journey, you'll hear a lot of no's. You'll see people ghost you. You'll sometimes see people write very rude things because they might not be in the right state of mind when your message reaches them. So you have to accept that nothing is to be taken personally. But if someone answers your request, take it as a bonus because they were not bound to do so, but they're still helping you. So never forget um, the amount of effort that it takes for them to help a stranger, and try to maintain a long lasting relationship with them. And then when you're sending out personalized invites on LinkedIn, be very clear about the purpose of that invite. So people usually write very vague responses. I had someone write a personalized invite the other day, and they were saying, hey, I see that you're an amazing leader in AI, would love to learn from your expertise. And it meant nothing to me because it was not specific. It was a very generic message that they might have sent to 10 other people. So I didn't accept that invite. But if you're really trying to reach out to someone, you have to focus on researching their profile. What have they posted? What interests them? What are they talking about? Try to do that research, and in your personalized invite, be honest about why are you reaching out. It can be as simple as you want to follow their journey because you read this article and you liked it, or maybe you wanting to get your resume reviewed. But the more honest and upfront you are about it, the more it helps the other person to understand that you're valuing their time, and they will be more willing to help you in that case. So that would be some of the things that I followed.
Yeah, 100%. So during our MBA times, right, one thing that we used to keep
Mm-hmm.
hearing is reach out to 20
Mm-hmm.
people. One or two people might be responding back to you, but you should cherish
Right.
those 10% responses or 5% responses that you have. But
Mm-hmm.
definitely reach out to them, network, and get all the contacts and stuff. Yeah, 100%.
Right, because I've also seen this a lot that not a lot of people are grateful for the help that they get these days. I've had people reaching out to me for resume reviews, and the moment I share the suggestions on how they can get their resume better, they don't even thank me, and they're done, right? So we are living in an era where people, once their work is done, once the purpose is served, they are not looking to build a long lasting relationship with that person. It's just based on, it's very transactional. It's based on what you can give me, what I can give you. But if you can get into the art of building these long lasting relationships, it's actually going to benefit your career. And so you have to think bigger.
Yeah, I have a funny incident which experience which I had on the similar note, right? So I have a community on Instagram, and literally there was one person who copy pasted their homework in their MBA class and sent it to me saying that, "Can you solve this for me?" I'm like, nobody, let me know if you have any questions while solving it. I can't do your homework for you. But yeah, on funnier note. I want to switch gears a little bit. Personal branding, networking is a long term game, right? So it's almost like you're planting a tree and then you get the fruits sometime, a lot later in the game, right? So maybe did you have any experience where you kept doing these things and something came on your way, that maybe brought you a new connection, brought you a new role, or any experience like that, if you can share it with us?
Yeah, I've recently had an experience like that where so I was trying to get more into the research side of things, and I was trying to understand, dive deeper into neural networks and understand what are the different research papers that are being published on this, and if I could maybe review some articles around it. And so while doing that, I was able to find a professor who was writing a lot of articles that I resonated with. So I reached out to that professor, talked about why I wanted to work with him and help him review a few things. And now that has given me an opportunity to review about 10 to 11 papers with him and also co-author a paper with him on neural networks. So I didn't start out thinking about these things, but it was about a mutual interest that we had around the same topic. And then now I can dive deeper into the mechanisms behind these technologies, because on the industry side, I feel like certain technologies are black box and we are more focused about the applications of those technologies. Versus here, I'm getting a chance to go into the intricacies of how these models are designed and what can we do, what is the research that is being done in this area, and it makes me a better professional then. So I was trying to do more of these things, and just that one connection, I would say, benefited me a lot in many aspects. So I didn't anticipate that, but it happened organically.
Nice. I want to switch gears, right? Like, let's come back to product management. So, I know you have been an engineer for some time, and
Right.
you have
Yeah.
recently moved into a product management role in the last year or two. So, want to understand your
hmm
journey on how you moved into product management. What are the different things that helped you there, etc.
Sure. So this is a story that never gets old, and the more I tell it, the more excited I am about it. But when I was an engineer, I used to be called the extroverted engineer. And everyone would, I would be that engineer who was always excited about presentations and wanted more demos on my plate. And we used to get very less opportunities to present to the leadership or to present to someone about the work that we were doing. Most of the presentations were at the team level, but to go to the higher platforms and talk about the products that we were working on from an engineering perspective, there's not a lot of opportunity around that in organizations. And so I used to be that engineer who was always excited to undertake these demos and presentations whenever they came our way. So during that time, I started working a lot with the product managers in my organization, because we were a cross-functional team. We were working on a lot of proof of concepts around some new technologies in our organization, and that gave me an opportunity to work with our product managers. And since I was working so closely with them, there was not a demarcation of what an engineer was doing and what a product manager was doing. So I ended up doing a lot of product management tasks without even realizing it. And that's when I started resonating a lot with the work that I was doing, because it involved brainstorming, it involved creating these strategy documents, it involved thinking about our market plan, and then also talking to the engineers about how we are going to release the product. So I started talking to my product managers, trying to understand what their career looked like, what got them to this career in the first place. Then I also set up a lot of coffee chats with people on LinkedIn. So I had around 200 coffee chats around
Wow.
people working on product management, and what there were different flavors of product management in the way that I saw it. And I was talking to everyone to understand what they did in their day-to-day lives. So I got very interested in this, and then I applied to a few universities in the US to pursue a master's in product management and then transition to this field. But when I resigned from my company because I wanted to come to the US for my master's, they also had an open position for product management in California, and so they transferred me to the US as a product manager. So I was an engineering lead in India, but then I got an opportunity to transition to an AI product manager in the US, which is like best of both worlds, because I also wanted global exposure and at the same time I wanted to switch my field. So that is how I came to the US. That is how I came to the field of product management. But it's just been 1 year, and I'm still exploring what product management has to offer, because I feel like as a field, this is a very vast and vague field at times. It's very open ended, and every organization treats the product manager role very differently. So I'm still trying to figure out what it means to be a product manager every day.
That's lovely here, because product management is a profession, right? Like, take three of us, me, Sidhu, and Srinath.
hmm
We three have been product managers for like quite some time now, and we three do like
hmm
all different kinds of things. Nothing really matches on a daily basis. And one more thing I loved what you said is whenever you want to switch a role, the best way to switch the role is to actually do that work rather than just
Right.
interviewing for it and then transitioning, because you're already into the weeds of it and then you can jump into the role automatically.
I think especially for product management, this is true because people have, again, they have very different notions of what product manager means. And they just read about it and they read some articles about it. And the articles tend to glorify what this role has to offer. And it is always glamorized and it says you get to work with the customers and you get to do this and you don't have to do the coding. You don't have to think about this. But it's not as glamorous as they make it to be, and you do have to get involved in the day-to-day workings of how the engineering is doing the task, how UI UX is working on it, how the quality assurance team is working on it. So you have to have a very good foundational understanding of what your product is setting out to do, what are the architecture, what is the different architectural frameworks that have been used. And unless you have that understanding, it's very difficult to be a good product manager. So people usually break into this field because they have very wrong reasons about what product management has to offer. And so maybe they get into this field because they hate coding, or maybe they get into this field because they want something that is business oriented, but that's just the surface of this field. And so it's very important to understand what your role is going to look like by actually doing the work. And if you can shadow a product manager, if you find an internal opportunity, it's always good to do a small proof of concept about whether this would be the career that you're looking for. Once you're sure of it, you can break into product. But I want to ensure that everyone breaks into product for the right reasons and not because they hate coding.
Think we also talk about it a lot, right? This shouldn't be a path where engineers move into product management just because they're not into coding, right? Yeah.
Right. No shortcuts.
One other thing I love to hear from people is the product mindset. So, whenever you're especially transitioning from engineers, I used to be an engineer 10 years ago, and then similar path, I did my MBA, transition into like product management roles and stuff. But one thing people struggle is having that product mindset or the product sense, like thinking about what exactly the customer wants, taking it a step back and understanding the problem rather than understanding what they exactly want, building a product that solves it. So, would love to get your thoughts on how do you go about doing that.
Sure. So I think when we talk about product sense, and I've been reading a lot of newsletters around this, and it's like the number one skill that any product manager should have. The problem is that when we talk about product sense, it's something that does not cultivate in you from your work alone, and you have to work on it beyond your job in order to build a good product sense. So when we talk about product sense, it's the art of crafting products that are set out to perform the intended use of that product. So let's say when Apple was building iPhone, their purpose behind it was that they wanted functionality with aesthetics. And then that is the core aspect that they focused on. And so every product out there is trying to solve a pain point. But does that pain point actually solve the user's problem, or is that an existing problem? So the more you work on different products and the more you think about your day-to-day products, the more you can build your product sense. So there are several ways in which product sense can be built, and I'm still learning to build my product sense every day. And then there are also certain metrics that you can keep in mind in order to understand if you're really improving. But the first thing is to understand how to have more empathy towards the users. So that would happen by looking at how users are using your product. And that's just being a silent observer. So when I do user interviews for my product, I do have a set of 5 to 6 questions that I usually interview the users on, but there's also a silent aspect in that interview where I'm just observing, asking them to share their screen if it's online, or if it's in person, I'm looking at how they are interacting with the product. So that alone gives me a lot of understanding about this is an area where they're struggling a lot, or this is the screen where they don't understand anything, and this is the screen where maybe it was not the primary use, but they're using it in a different way. So just silently observing how your users are using your product, that will give you a lot of understanding into what should be going into the product and what are the features that might not be as useful. The second thing is if you are looking at your everyday products and you're trying to assess what are the different things that you appreciate and what are the different things that lack over here. So that would happen by doing a lot of product case studies. For instance, I was doing a product case study on Duolingo. I wrote an article about it that I can share with you later. But what I observed was Duolingo has made their entire onboarding process very seamless. And let's say I am trying to learn a language by going to Duolingo and I'm trying to take some lessons on Spanish. Let's take an example. So if I'm logging in at 5 p.m. every day and taking my lessons, and then one day I don't show up, I get an email at exact 5 p.m. to say that, hey, you are missing your class. Why don't you join? Why don't you go to Duolingo and complete your lesson? So they've been able to identify that users are usually free for 2 to 3 hours in a day where they take these lessons, and that's consistent in their schedule. So maybe I do it every day after my work, or maybe I do it every day after dinner. And they are clever enough to send the email at the exact time where I might be more willing to go to their platform and take that lesson, which is increasing their user retention later. So there are these different things that you can observe about your everyday products. And then you can identify, if I would have been the product manager for this feature, this is what I would have changed, or this is what I would have continued. And then the more you start doing things like these, you'll notice that you're getting better at it, because you'll be able to look at every product and understand what's good and what's not good about it. And you will tend to start liking these conversations with different people about what I appreciate in Google Maps, what I appreciate in iPhone, what I appreciate in my phone, or what is something that I would change on YouTube. So you'll get into more of those conversations, and that makes you a better product manager because you will bring that understanding in the product that you're designing. So that is, and there are obviously a thousand other things that you can do, but I would suggest starting with things like these, which are doable and which take just about 5 to 10 minutes every day to sit and think about things like these.
Yeah, and a lot of, I don't know, like sometimes really good ideas come out when you're actually not working, right? Maybe when you're gardening, working out, or in the shower, where you're thinking through that problem over and over and again, and then you'll have a breakthrough idea sometime.
Yeah. So I think this is where the passion about being a product manager comes in as well. You can be a product manager that's not very excited about your product, but you can be a product manager who is giving in your 100% to the product that you're building because you believe in the mission of that product. And so if you start building your product sense, if you start focusing on how do I make this a better product or what can I learn from other products, then it makes you a more competent product manager. And then that's something that you have to keep doing every day.
Yeah, I know we covered a lot of ground, but I think there's also an interesting piece where you were working on some of the AI product management stuff and all, right? So, if you were to talk us through what a typical AI product manager's day looks like, right? What would that be?
Sure. So I think it's a question that I can take an hour to answer, but I'll try to wrap it up shortly. I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. So let me first give you an understanding about what is the product that we work on. So I work for Oracle Hospitality, and we work on a core enterprise platform for hotel operations and distribution. So to give you an example, if I am a guest who is going to a hotel and I'm checking in, I'm staying in one of the rooms and then I'm checking out. So there is an entire series of logistics that have to be taken care of from the time that I book the reservation, I check in, arrive at the property, complete my stay, and then check out. And then there's a lot of billing related stuff that is associated. So all these logistics are they are handled by a software. And so this particular software that we work on, it was initially on premise. Now it is migrated to cloud. We have made it cloud native. So once we completed this migration within our organization, we started feeling like now most of our features are present in cloud. Our customers are happy, they've been migrated to cloud, but we were collecting a lot of customer data. And this is where the opportunity to dive deeper into that data and derive insights from it came into the picture. So we started thinking about how could we use the historical booking data that we have in order to add value to our customers. And the customers that we're talking about, these are front desk agents, housekeeping agents in the hotel. Every click in the application is important for them because when a guest is standing at the front desk, they're waiting to be checked in. you are dealing with a pressure-filled situation, and the more time you take, the more frustrated your guest is going to be. So every part of the workflow was very important for these users. It's a B2B product, and we only have to think about our front desk and housekeeping agents. So we started diving into the historical booking data, and then we identified a few use cases. One use case was the room pricing. So if you would have seen during the hotel, and you would have seen this while booking reservations with any hotels, that if you're booking it in December, the prices are maybe they are not that high. But if you're booking it around a time where maybe Grace Hopper celebration is in the same city, the hotel prices would go up. And it's because they are constantly monitoring the demand around them, and they're also looking at what are the events that are happening. So maybe there's a conference in the city that causes the prices to go up. At the same time, it might be something like Thanksgiving, where they want to be at home. They are not going to book a lot of reservations with hotels because they're spending time with their family. So at that time, the prices would go down. So how do we price rooms optimally? That's a constant pain point in the hospitality industry. And what we're doing is we are looking at the historical booking data, and we are trying to predict the occupancy rates at specific times of the year. And then based on that prediction, based on how many cancellations would this property typically receive in a day, based on those things, we are trying to come up with what is the predicted occupancy rate, what is the predicted cancellation rate, and how should the rooms be priced. And this is something that the revenue managers in the hotels would handle, but we give them recommendations about what are the room prices that they should have for every day. Again, it's based on what is their base rate and what is their commission on top of that, but we do give them the recommended base rate for their property because they can now forecast the demand, and based on that demand they can price their rooms. So that was one of the use cases that we observed. The other use case that we observed a lot was most of our customers, when they were reaching out to us with some queries and with some complaints about the product, most of the times they were not able to understand how the workflow was designed. And so maybe there was a configuration issue, or maybe there was a lack of understanding in how the feature is designed. So they would raise all these tickets. They would raise these support tickets, which would take 4 days to be registered with the Oracle support team, and then it would come to the engineer, and then the engineer would look at what is the issue. Product manager would look into it, and then they would discover that this is a configuration issue. So it would add a cycle of about 5 to 10 days for every ticket or for every complaint that they were raising. So what we did was we offered a conversational AI interface to our customers right within the application. And when they had any issue, they could simply search, they could just type that issue. Hey, I'm facing issues with reservation. I'm not able to understand how this is working. How do I complete the billing for this reservation? And then if there is a user guide or if there is any documentation around that feature, they would first get that, and not just the entire document, but the exact snippet of the paragraph that they should be reading in order to understand what their issue was. And if that still doesn't solve the problem, then they would raise a ticket with us. So the conversational AI interface, which was like their assistant in the application, would help us in tackling about 60% of their complaints, because those were resolved just by looking at the user guides, just by looking at the documentation. So we were doing all this text extraction for them through the conversational AI interface, and they were able to interact with the chatbot and get solutions to their queries. And if the issue was still outstanding, then it would reach the engineers, and then it would be solved. So we were trying to bridge the gap between what were some frequently asked questions and what were some if there was any miscommunication, or if there was any gap in understanding what they were trying to do with the application, then that would be mitigated by just sharing the relevant documentation and the relevant snippet of documentation pertaining to their queries.
Also trying to do something similar like an assistant kind of thing. So and it's not easy, right? So I think the tech, sometimes I feel that the tech is easy, but the I think satisfaction rate on how the assistant answers is not easy, and getting that up is the problem. And like what you do, like do you train these LLMs with the data you have, and do you ground it? What do you use, any specific framework for that? Or
Yeah, so we we have to use Oracle internal tools for this. We are not allowed to use open source tools unless Oracle does not have an option for that.
Okay.
But we do use a tool which is called as Oracle Digital Assistant
Okay.
for building the conversational AI interface. So they have an option of bringing our own LLMs, which we can add to the platform, and then it can be used. So we train that particular model based on the data for that property, because again, every hotel interacts with that chatbot in a very different way. So we train it per customer, and we continue to review the insights that come out of. So there is an analytics report that comes with the chatbot interactions. So we monitor it every week, and we see where the chatbot was not able to understand what the customer said. And there's an additional level of complexity that gets added here because we also offer translation. So we offer translation in about 40 to 50 languages.
Awesome.
And that makes it very difficult because some people, depending on the language, the way that they phrase their queries are very different. They write dates differently, they write days differently, they write the property name differently. So there are there are a lot of differences in the way that people interact with that chatbot, but we are learning based on those insights, and we're monitoring and retraining that model every week.
Yeah, I think even for all of the AI models, right? I think the main is that accuracy, like getting that accuracy up, and also slicing and dicing that data. And it's always almost for any LLM or any RAG framework which you use to ground an LLM, it's bad data in, bad data out. So I think there needs to be a lot of slicing, dicing, pruning of data, and sorting of the data. So that's where you get good responses out of it. So yeah, makes sense. And maybe like to a follow-up question, right? Like if I were to say how is this different from regular product management, right? Like or what are some duties which you do in addition, or do a little different to traditional product management in building this product? What would they be?
So I feel like an AI product manager in some days might just be called a product manager, because when we talk about AI product management, it's only the way that the nature of work differs is you're dealing with AI systems, but everything other than that is similar. Your processes, the way that you deal with your engineers is similar. The major difference that I see here is you're also dealing with data scientists here. And sometimes data scientists get too focused on the math. And so you as a product manager have to bring them back to why are we building this? So they get too focused about optimizing the accuracy when maybe the feature that we are building is not going to add any value to the user. And so you have to constantly ground the data scientists and get them back to the fact that we are building this for our users. This is what our users want, and we can always optimize the accuracy later. So in order to deal with those data scientists, you should be able to understand the foundation of how these models work. Maybe not that deep of a technical understanding, but you should have a holistic picture of how these models work, how they're designed, how they're trained, so that you can talk to the data scientists and you can let them know, and you can ground them and reroute them to what is the priority for that particular product. So that is one. The other difference that I see is as an AI product manager, you deal with more uncertainty than the normal products. Because when I'm working on a core feature, where let's say I'm making a UI for the user being able to book a reservation, then there are a set examples of processes that I have to follow, and there are a set of metrics that I know that everyone has to abide by. But as an AI product manager, I myself am exploring if this feature will work or not by doing several proof of concepts. And some of those features might be successful, some of those features might not work. And you have to be ready for that kind of experimentation mode. You're always in experimentation mode as an AI product manager, where you're figuring out if this feature might add value, but it not perform that well with the customer. And it happened in our case as well, where we were trying to build an algorithm for assigning rooms to different reservations, and we were trying to come up with an intelligent way to do it, but it did not strike well with our customers, because they felt like AI was doing it and they got scared, and they wanted more transparency about how AI was assigning these rooms. So a lot of times we've had these questions from the customers where they don't really understand the value that we are adding, and maybe because we are not solving for the right problem. So as an AI product manager, then we've gone back to questioning the why. behind the feature and then maybe trying to solve a different problem that's actually a pain point for the customers. So that is something that you sign up for. You're constantly dealing with uncertainty and you have to be okay with iterating and sometimes starting your product from scratch in order to meet your customer needs.
I know we have already talked, right? Like product management is complex by nature, and now we are adding another feather in the hat and maybe even more uncertainty into this and more experimentation and more trying to figure out things. So yeah, thanks for walking us through all of that stuff. And I think there's not much literature out there on what a product management is or correct definition around that, but this helps at least people to understand what it might look like in the future and how it would evolve as we go there. Awesome. So yeah.
Also observed I've also watched a lot of talks around this that eventually everyone will be an AI product manager. It's just that right now people are giving it that AI product manager term. Eventually it will be like every product manager should know AI, and then AI will dissolve from the tag. It will not be a part of the title anymore. It will be a part of the job description.
Core job skills of a product manager.
Core job skills,
Not just
absolutely.
product manager, dude. Every engineer will know AI down the line, or every role in tech should
Right.
know AI down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some way or the other in which AI will embed into our products to optimize our processes, to optimize the way that customers interact with those products. So eventually that'll be the case. I remember that there was a time where Android PM used to be a thing. They used to
Mm.
specifically call they used to call those product managers Android product managers. But now every product manager working on Android development is just a product manager, right? So because it's become a part of the products that we design. We always tested for mobiles. We always tested for different resolutions. And so same is the case with AI. And many people have talked about this, that eventually it will just be a product manager. So don't run behind becoming an AI product manager is what I would say.
Awesome. So I know, like we covered a lot of ground, right? We covered personal branding, products, and say product management. So normally, what we do is like end with a trivia. So as product managers, you do a lot of research and consume a lot of content. So we want to ask everybody their favorite, places where they go to consume content. So maybe we'll start with the first question. Like, if you were to mention one go-to book, right? Like, what would that be? Fiction or non-fiction?
For product management or
Anything, right?
anything.
Like, which is your
Anything.
favorite? And yeah,
So I would say Atomic Habits by James Clear.
funny. I think you also made a video over that. Is that it? Right?
I made
Is
a
that it?
video out of
Right?
that, yeah, sometime back. Yeah, I love that as well because you don't think about the
Yeah,
overall goal; you think about the steps that you take every day to finally achieve your goal. Yeah,
definitely.
it still stays next to my bed. Like before I sleep, I just read the few pages and sleep. It's like amazing to just refresh that. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
And you mentioned also going through some newsletters and stuff like that. Like, are there any newsletters which you could point us towards, or which is your go-to newsletter to read about product management?
I think when you think about product, it has to be Lenny's newsletter. Lenny writes such great stuff about the product management field, and he interviews people, shares their perspectives. So it's been great being a subscriber and learning a lot about that field through his newsletter. So I would recommend every product manager to read that.
Good. And what about a podcast?
Apart from everything product,
Yeah, apart from
uh, I would say for podcast, there's a podcast by Product School that I follow where they interview different product managers and they talk about their day-to-day life. So I would highly recommend that. It's on all audio platforms. You can just search for Product School podcast. And whenever I go for a walk, I try to listen to one of those episodes. It helps me understand what different kinds of product managers exist in this world. That is
Yeah,
good.
cool. This is great, Ketki. Actually, one last thing, right, before we wrap up the podcast. If there is a couple of things that you would recommend um, early product managers or product managers who are growing in their career, what would that be?
So we talked a lot about building product sense, and it particularly is very important when you're giving interviews that you are able to prove to your interviewer that you're thinking from a product lens. So I would recommend any early career professional trying to break into product, try to build your product sense by reading a lot of product case studies. And funny, I can also share a few links with you
Mhm.
where there are some very good Medium publications that they share product case studies every week, and I read a lot of those. So I'll share those with you. So would recommend reading through those product case studies, listening to as many product managers as you can, either by scheduling a coffee chat or by just watching different podcasts where product managers are talking about their experience, because then you'll understand how to articulate yourself in a way that is more product focused and that shows that you can be a competent product manager. And then if you're breaking into product management from a non-product field, it can be a non-technical background, it can be any background. Also think about the transferable skills that you can bring from that profession to this one. For instance, if you're breaking into product from a psychology background, then you can relate it to user psychology and you can showcase how you understand that better. If you're breaking into it from an engineering perspective, you can say that I have a very good technical foundation and therefore I will be more competent in interacting with the engineers and helping to keep them accountable in the product launch. That is one thing that you could say. So think very deeply about the background that you're coming from and what are the transferable skills that you can bring to the product field from that experience. So you're not starting from scratch. It's important to remember that, and it's important to highlight and stress on those qualities during the interview. Those are just some few things to build the product mindset, and then eventually once you break into product, keep updating yourself about what is happening in your field by reading research papers, listening to podcasts, and the usual that we do.
No, this is awesome, Ketki. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and thank you so much for sharing all of the
Mhm.
knowledge with all of our listeners. And thank you for your time.